everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Close your eyes and think about your mother. You can probably describe her mothering skills very easily, but what do you really know about your mom? Do you know her desires, her dreams, her fears? Do you know if she even wanted to be a mom? On this edition of Another View, a conversation with Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist and author Desiree Cooper about her new book, Know the Mother. Through fiction, Des takes a deep dive into the worlds of motherhood and womanhood. And trust me, they are not necessarily the same thing. Know the Mother. It's next on Another View, so stay with us.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. A quick community note before we get into today's discussion. If you're looking for a great community project to become involved in, let me tell you about Neighborhood Markers. This is a unique partnership between Old Dominion University, the Neon District in Norfolk, PB Young Elementary School, and the entire Young Terrace neighborhood. This community-oriented mural focuses on what's most important to the Young Terrace neighborhood, its children and its resilience, and they need your help to complete the painting. More than 250 people have participated so far, and there are 2 weeks left of painting. So gather your friends and family and come paint. For more information, go to neighborhoodmarkers.com. That's neighborhoodmarkers.com. So I am so excited to talk with my guest today. Desiree Cooper is a former attorney, Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist, a 2015 Kresge Artist Fellow, and a Detroit community activist. And she wrote the book, and she has ties right here in Hampton Roads. And she's also a terrific author. And she joins me today to talk about her latest book, Know the Mother. Hey, Des. How you doing, Des?
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited. So normally people, I don't know if my audience knows this or not, but when I have authors on, I actually read the whole book before I invite them to come on because I just need to make sure that I understand where they're coming from and what their perspective is and so forth. I will tell you that I read one story out of your book and I picked up the phone.
Oh my God.
It just struck me that much. And so I'm going to ask you to read the story. It actually is the very first story of a collection of short stories about mothers and about women.
Right.
And how those two mesh.
Right.
Definitely.
Exactly. And just before I get started,
Sure.
I do want first, thank you for having me here. And I think this is going to be a fun discussion because it's about things that we don't get to talk about as mothers, sort of what's bubbling underneath the skin. But my book is a collection of what's called flash fiction. Oh. Short. What I'm about to read you is one paragraph.
Exactly.
There are some that are about 3 pages. The longest might be about 6 pages. So I always tell people, you can handle it before you go to sleep. You know how you do that 1 page and then you're out? And they're not linked, so you can almost read it like a magazine. Just pick up any page, read whatever you want, and then
and I found that so interesting because I want to talk to you about kind of your technique because you really put us in the moment, like immediately. Yeah. So let's start with the first one.
So here's the moment.
Okay, here's the moment.
It's called Witching Hour. Why do we wake each night in that spiritless moment between worlds, we mothers, daughters, and wives? And why does the night abandon us to twinkling worry, to the rattling breaths of our children, to the hard floor of our long prayers? What fresh dangers tap against the black window? And why do our men snore so easily as the horror gathers? And why is it always at 3:15 that evil drags us from beneath the red wine or white pills to make us sit up and see the world so clearly? Who comes to whisper our names and turn our blood to sludge? Where is the mercy for those of us who lie awake, weeping in the eternal hours before the crucifixion?
I tell you, I don't think there is a woman who is under the age of 50, over the age of 50, who does not relate specifically
so
to 315.
It's so funny that you really resonated with this one and that you asked me to read it now in the Easter season because the witching hour is a thing. Biologically, women, typically over the age of 50, do have this rhythm where they wake up around 3 to 4 a.m.
That's true.
And it is common. It's universal. We kind of think it's our own personal issue, but it's not.
True. And then when you talk to your girlfriends and they all go,
they're all up.
I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right. And it's called the witching hour because, well, I was relating this to the Easter season, is because this is folklore, Christian folklore. This is not textual related. But folklore is that Jesus was crucified at 3:15 in the afternoon. And so at 3:15 in the morning is when his mother would have wakened to this horror, sort of knowing what was going to be happening to her son later that day. And it's the witching hour that wakens all mothers to those fears. So when I was getting more into the history of the word witching hour, that's exactly what it conjured for me, and that's what I was trying to capture in the piece.
Wow! And on Good Friday, what a great way to start today's story. So tell me a little bit. Who's your muse? How do you get to this place in terms of the stories that you write?
Well, people often ask me, are the stories true? And I always say to them, well, they didn't all happen to me, but they're all true.
Okay.
And so that's what fiction can do, is like you can tell aspects of your own experience, of the women around you, of the women who loved you and parented you and guided you, of the women you're raising in the world. And you can tell all those aspects and the truth of those without them actually have happened to you. But I think that one of the power of the stories is that you will recognize, as a woman, you're going to recognize something of yourself in those pages somewhere.
And the thing I thought was so interesting also is that how universal our experiences are. It doesn't matter what your skin color is, because as you write about many different types of women or races of women and different socioeconomic situations and so forth. But yet there's that common thread that goes through in terms of kind of that longing, that desire to be considered more than just, if you will, a mother. And it's not that women don't recognize how critical it is to be a mom.
Right. And it's not that women don't love being mothers, but they love a lot of things. And for some women, I would say for my mother, her aspiration and profession was mother. She did other things as well, but that was truly what was fulfilling for her and what she strove to be. I had that tape in my mind, and I thought maybe that's what it would be like for me, and it was the opposite. And I felt that mother was one of the many choices I had made in life, and maybe at different times not my priority choices. I mean, I knew I had to take care of these lovely human beings that I dearly loved and cared for. But I also had to take care of me. And I really struggled with the conflict over who got the attention when.
And it's interesting because I wonder if older women, because like you said, your mother, my mother, people in that generation in their 80s, 70s, 80s, and so forth, the expectation was motherhood. They accepted that and went for it. But yet they still probably had buried way underneath their own desires and their own wants. And sometimes it may not have been to be a mother. But then they were called spinsters, or they were called something else.
Right. Yes. Well, you're sort of hitting on what the unifying theme is around the stories. And that is, I try to share the intimate experience of gender and race. So it's one thing to say, oh, there's gender norms and I don't want to be this and that, and I want to be called this and that, and feminism, XYZ. I do use the F word. I do consider myself a feminist, so I need to throw that out there.
Okay.
But that feels, especially in this day and age, like a lot of rhetoric that's floating like out there. But it's so different to me, especially gender norms can be particularly oppressive because I do feel like there's no hiding. When I'm African American, when I'm in my house, I am not a black person. Everybody in my house is black. We're all having the exact same experience.
Mm-hmm.
I never feel different because of my Blackness in my home.
Mm-hmm.
But I will have the person I married, the person I gave birth to, the people I befriended treat me differently because of my gender in my house. So my children, because I have ovaries, will say, "Where are my socks?"
That's true. They don't ask the husband.
Exactly. My spouse will say things, "Where's dinner?" or that kind of thing. And, I'm divorced now, but still very good friends with my husband, who I met seating beside him in law school.
Wow.
Okay. So how is it that suddenly I know where dinner is or how it's going to happen, and you can't figure it out?
Figure that out. And both of you were lawyers.
Right. So gender will slap you where you live, where race doesn't. It can do that, but it doesn't always do that.
That's really interesting. I had really hadn't thought about it that way.
When I got married,
that's true.
I did not take I kept my quote unquote maiden name, whatever that means, but I didn't change my name when I got married. And my parents kept sending me letters and stuff to Mrs. my husband's name.
Really?
My parents.
Because they couldn't get past your wanted to keep your
right.
maiden
And I kept
name.
saying, "Mom, my name is the one you gave me. It has not changed. Why is this so hard?" So again,
what was
gender
her
norms.
response? Yeah. What did she?
They just felt it was being disrespectful, and also being a Mrs. was an aspiration for her.
Yeah.
So for me to have achieved that and married a great person
And
I'm
not
building
tell
a
the world
family
and not flaunt it to the world.
and not carry that title
Yeah.
was disrespectful.
Yeah.
So, and she never got over that. She would still call me Mrs. XYZ, and I'd be looking back for my mother-in-law like, who are you?
Ooh,
I
you
don't
talking to me?
understand. Yeah.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about being a mother, being a woman, and how those two intersect. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So what was going on that made you say, "I'm going to sit down and write this book"?
Nope.
Nope,
Up. That's not how it happened.
Okay.
Because I was a mother and a wife, and I felt, I was raised in, my dad was career Air Force and sort of, middle class driving family. Being a writer was like saying I wanted to be a ballet dancer. Like, that's really cute.
But go get a
What's
real
your
job.
Which explains the law school.
Yes.
I have no idea how that happened. But so these stories got written over the course of 20 years.
Wow.
When I had snatches of time or ideas, I've only wanted to be a writer since I was 4 years old. And I have never stopped doing that or holding on to that. But, it's sort of the story of the book. It took me almost a lifetime. I mean, this book got published when I turned 56, my first published book.
So you stuck with it, though. That's the point. You said you did not give up on your dream.
Yeah.
And so many women do.
Yeah. It didn't, it felt like a hobby for most of those years. And it took me a little bit of just standing up on my own 2 feet and declaring my intention to be a writer, and nothing's going to stop me. Mm-hmm. And now I am caregiving for 2 parents. My daughter and her husband live here with their 3 kids. We all moved from Detroit down here to do the caregiving. Mm-hmm. And so there are times where I have 2 seniors who have Alzheimer's and 3 children under the age of 5 underfoot, so I can help support my daughter. And I keep saying, but I'm still going to write. It's not going to stop me now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Air Force story that's in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So many things came. So this is the story of a family traveling, African-American family, traveling with the father is in his uniform, and they want to stop. The boys are restless and the kids are restless, and they want to stop at the Holiday Inn and check in. And it's not a good experience.
No. No. And this is back in time. I think it's in the 60s when it takes place.
Want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we crisscrossed the country 3 times when my dad was in the Air Force in the car.
Wow.
And so we've stopped in these podunk places where
Did you have a green book?
We didn't have a green book, but we probably should have. We probably should have. And because we didn't, we sort of knew how to read the signs. I mean, you absolutely knew what hotel chains. And at that point, my dad was pretty clear that there were some you could not stop in. And I do remember saying, there's a vacancy, we want to stop. Like, we wanted the pool and we wanted the wrap soaps and we wanted all that. We just thought that was just, everything. And he would say, no, I'm not tired. We're going to keep driving. He wouldn't say they're not going to let us in there. And it was typically motels, not hotels, but motels would more often let you stay than hotels.
Than hotels would.
And so we would do that. When I was born, the first time we went across country, I was an infant, and my parents stopped in parks and washed me in the fountains in the parks. I remember our first carry-out dinner, before there was such thing as drive-thrus and carry-outs, was a chicken place in the South where they pulled up. My dad did drive in uniform all the time, and the owner said, go back in the back and we'll bring the food out to you. And we thought that was amazing. That was one thing that parents really did have to decide what the narrative was going to be so that the children weren't so damaged and weren't walking through life feeling like other people had power over you,
In your story, though, the mother, if I recall correctly, she's pretty silent.
Yes.
In this, other than hugging her children when they ran up because they were so upset because they realized why ultimately they weren't allowed to stay. But she really didn't say much, and I just found that curious. You didn't like that,
did you?
No, it bothered me.
Why not?
Well, maybe it's because
I was probably
now.
Why not?
Probably because I was coming from my perspective as opposed to what was happening in the time.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So there's another story in the collection called Home for the Holidays.
Yes.
And it is a contemporary story of a family leaving Detroit, which we did many times, leaving from Detroit, and we drove to Virginia for holidays. And in that story, this couple is accosted, it's in the middle of the night. They're the only cars on the road, and they're being trailed by a truck.
Yes.
And the truck is trying to, knock this is the driving while black story. And in that story, the woman's behind the wheel and the husband is asleep at the time when this happens. So what I wanted to do is sort of have the counterpoint of how racism works within the family structure and what happens, the difference between when a man feels empowered in the family to protect his family from racism and from outside danger, and when the man does not. And so this is always at play within black heterosexual relationships. And that is, men can often feel very emasculated by racism, by not having the power to do something to protect their child or their wife or themselves so that they can provide for the families.
Because when he goes into this hotel and this guy is clearly telling him, no, you can't stay here. And the last thing you can feel is that he wants to turn around and go back out to say to his family, we have to go.
And he doesn't. He doesn't fight. He doesn't
fight. That's
he
true.
doesn't fight because he has a family to protect.
Yes.
But he's the one that's calling all the shots in the old school story. He's the one calling all the shots. He's behind the wheel. He's engages,
determining when they're stopping and so forth.
And if the family hadn't actually sort of wandered into the lobby, maybe he would have been able to come out and say, there's no rooms for us, and he could have covered and gone. Now, the son figures out what's happened and is upset, wants to fight, and the father is like, we can't do that now. I've got to make my family safe. In the second story, the husband is asleep when the danger starts, and he can't grab the wheel.
True, yes.
And he's got to feel like calm down his wife and sort of talk them both through this very scary moment where they get things thrown at them, etc. calm children who are in the back seat. And in the end, the car is safe and stops, and the woman gets out and just walks away. So there's a little bit of a feeling, it's up for the reader's interpretation, but there could be a feeling that this woman did not feel protected in that moment, or felt so rattled that he was not relevant to that experience. Exactly. And he could have felt powerless in that. And then what does that do to a couple? This is what we internalize in a racist society, that we never investigate and we never really see how it's working when we bring it home.
Another one of those microaggressions. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Robert joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Robert. You're on the air.
Yes, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call. Oh my God, my question is to me, it's complicated. I hope it's not to you. I was listening to you earlier speak about, how you wouldn't change your name when you were married, and there's certain things that you wouldn't conform to. I've read your book twice, and I love the book until I heard you speak on the air about a few things, which have me really confused now about a great deal many of the stories that you have in the book, especially the one that you read on the air.
Why are you confused? I'm trying to get to. Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, it's great that we educate ourselves and we come into believing certain things in life. But you said your beliefs about marriage, and I guess I could say kowtowing to your husband as far as name and all of this business is concerned, has cost you a lot more than what you've actually earned in your pursuit of greatness. And don't get me wrong, I feel you are great in the writings of your book, but when you said, you wouldn't do certain things, that totally changed my perspective of who you are.
Okay, Robert, thanks for the call. Let's let her respond.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's his prerogative.
That's exactly.
And also, thank you for buying my book and reading it, Robert, and sticking with it, especially considering the fact that it's maybe raised questions for you. But let me just say this, Barbara. Flash fiction is a gift to the reader because it is so intense and so short. You can it's your story. So the idea is to put you in a situation, move the parts around a little bit, leave you in a different place, move you a little bit, but then you decide how this ends. You decide where these people are going next. You decide where it sits with you. And so Robert clearly took the stories and put them within a worldview that he ascribes to, and they fit there because that's what Flash is. That's fantastic. Now he's hearing me talk, and he's wondering maybe how the stories even came from me, because he thought
he had a different perspective as one.
But it's his story. So I invite him to continue to love and cherish the stories the way he did. I'm not telling you how to interpret the stories. And also, I do want to back up, but all life experiences are learning experiences, and they're all valuable. And so I had a wonderful marriage, and I'm still very much friends with. I'm not anti-male, and I worked very hard. The fact that Robert read this twice, I hope, is a signal that this is not a man-hating book.
No, and it's
all.
Not. It's not a man-hating book.
And so I've had many kinds of experiences that feed into what I put on the page.
It's kind of like I think sometimes when people see an actor, and the actor is playing a role, and they start to subscribe that individual to that character's personality and that character's mores and so forth. And then when they hear the real person, then they're kind of stunned, and that to me is kind of where.
And also the stories have the tone of memoir. It has the tone of memoir, and so people can easily confuse it. These are fiction. These are not my life stories.
Exactly.
These are fiction
That's
stories.
the thing to remember. If you're just joining us, we're talking about motherhood and womanhood with journalist and author Desiree Cooper, author of Know the Mother, a collection of flash short stories.
Yeah, flash fiction, exactly.
Flash fiction, absolutely. The book is called Know the Mother. So I want to talk about a particular one that resonated with me.
Okay.
And it's called To the Bone. And I guess because it to me, it just showed the difference between generations in terms of what is considered attractive and what isn't. The idea of European beauty versus African American beauty was there. The whole idea of changing of the next generation wanting to change what the future generation, what the previous generation had done. It kind of had all of that to me. And I'm not going to read the whole story, but I just wanted to start from the part where she talks about Julie, about her husband and being raspberry or blueberries rather, the blueberries.
All right. The blackberries were ripe for plucking the summer I swayed in front of Thalius Jones. In the back of his uncle's pickup, he sunk his teeth into my tender flesh and gripped the rounds of my hips. "Girl, you give a man something to hold on to," he said. That Christmas, he brought Mama 2 bright oranges and Pa a bunch of raisins still on the vine. We got married in the spring. When I sat at the table with Thalius, he spooned his turnips into my bowl. "Eat up," he said. "I'ma have me a big fat baby."
And go on, finish the rest of it, if you don't mind.
No problem. Tessie was a big fat baby. Everywhere I went, folks would draw in a breath and say, "Woo-wee, look at that girl." I'd shine her up with Vaseline, gather her thick hair in a bow, and parade her at the 5 and dime. I walked one-sided with her on my hip. When Thalius would come home in the evenings from the post office, the kitchen would be heavy with the smell of fried pork chops and onions. He'd holler, "Where's my big bone girls?" Until the day she grew up and got married, Tessie would always run to him first. He'd take her moon face with both hands, let his thumbs run over her velvet skin, and tell her she was the prettiest girl in the world. My granddaughter Madison has the velvety complexion that her mom always had, and a face as wide and self-satisfied as the moon's. She used to let me pinch her delicious thighs, and she blushed when Thalius called her pork pie. But now Madison's 13 and growing up, she gets mad at the things that used to make her smile. Last week, I took her school shopping for a pair of those jeans that fit like the skin of an onion. The lady in the store frowned and said, "We don't carry those large sizes, sweetie." The moon went into shadow, and I couldn't cheer Madison up even with a bowl of Haagen-Dazs. The moon is shadowed by evening clouds as I set my bowl of home cooking in front of Madison. At 16, she is now thin. I worry how she will ever become a blackberry ripe for picking. "Eat," I say, spooning Madison some food. She eyes my prosperous waist. "No thanks, Nanny," she says politely. Her eyes have no sparkle, like the eyes of the alabaster girls in the magazines. She pushes around the food that I have cooked for her, but I eat without shame. Braised turnips, ham, and crackling bread.
It just really, that one also just really resonated with me in terms of how we allow others sometimes to determine whether or not we are attractive. And
absolutely. And I think to a certain extent, the Black community has had some immunity to that is now waning. Mm-hmm. So, Black women always talk about curvy or big boned, and, we rebel against this very, starvation-like signs of beauty. But our children are starting to gravitate more toward that. And we are seeing anorexia and bulimia more in the Black community than we have in the past. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to get away from that toxic relationship to the mainstream culture and how it impacts. Part of what this story does is talk about how for the grandmother, having more meat on your bones was literally prosperity. You were walking around prosperous and showing that.
Meaning that you could eat on a regular basis.
You could eat on the regular.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a scene earlier in the story where, as a little girl, she brings a jam biscuit to school, and there's a girl that's just she's just savoring it like a dog, like the Pavlovian response of watering in her mouth because she doesn't have enough to eat.
Right.
So this mother's growing up with eat, eat, eat. And if I can parade
And her
you.
husband, and her boyfriend then becomes husband, says, I want a woman with meat on her bones.
Right.
And he talks about that.
And we still, as a community, talk about our fat babies.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so.
You do not
Very
want a
much so.
skinny
You don't
chicken
want it
looking
to-
baby. You want a fat baby. But you also want that baby then to start conforming to more normal, quote unquote, or mainstream kind of ideas of beauty the older they get.
Yeah.
But you started them out with a different kind of way of looking, being, and eating. So it's very schizophrenic for our community.
I had to smile at the line of, I used to grease her up with Vaseline.
You know that well, huh? Shine her up.
I thought that was really cute. So what's your favorite story? Who's your favorite character?
Oh gosh, it's almost like a mood ring. It depends on my mood. The title story, Know the Mother, has very special meaning to me, because I am dealing with mothering my mother at this point. But what's interesting is that I wrote that story. That's one of the first stories I wrote more than 20 years ago, long before. Again, these stories are not biographical. They were fiction. They're made up. But I do think that it's very easy for any woman to imagine the day that she will have to mother her mother. And that gets even more fraught depending on how far she is away from her mother, or emotionally or physically. Our society's whole approach to bringing people into the world and ushering them out is, this is what I say the approach is: get a girl to do it.
Yeah.
It's either going to be a woman you pay low wages to do, or it's going to be a woman in your family, quite often the oldest daughter.
Yep, who's going to take care of it.
And
That's
that
true.
cannot continue to be our entire public policy approach.
Wow. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Heather joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Heather. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm calling to celebrate this conversation, this wonderful woman, artist, writer, poet, and a good citizen, especially in this topic of caring for our parents as they age and making sure that we all help out with that. But my primary point was earlier about asking Mom where the socks were, and I had to ask my dad because my dad did the laundry. I was fortunate to grow up in a gender-neutral home between my mom and dad, but also with both sets of grandparents because everybody was working and everybody had to pitch in. So Dad did grocery shopping and some cooking. He did all the laundry because we had to go to a laundromat. And so I would have to ask Dad where the socks were. So it is doable. It's hard to negotiate those things sometimes, but I think everybody benefits from chipping in as much as they can. But thanks for this blessing and this beautiful, beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, Heather,
Thanks,
for the
Heather.
call. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And, it's funny because even when you do try to rail against the gender roles, they are pretty entrenched. I mean, it's how our society is actually structured. I mean, what's the first thing you want to know about a baby? Is it a
What's
boy
a
or girl?
Right.
I mean, you need to know that on the internet with these big reveal parties way before the baby comes.
Exactly.
Because you have to know how to treat them.
Yes. And you have to know how to decorate the room, too.
Decorate them. Yeah, that's part of how you're going to treat them.
That's how you're gonna treat them.
It is hard to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how your favorite is the title of the book, and Know the Mother. Both of you and I have had the conversation. We're both taking care of our mothers, and you're right. It usually is the oldest daughter, or a woman, another woman that you have to pay, to make that happen.
I've done a little bit of research, and I don't want to be too wonky here, but the point is that this is something that many women undertake gladly. It's part of who we are and part of what we're socialized to do. It's part of what it means to love people and to be in family. So I wouldn't have it any other way right now, even though it costs women a lot. Yeah. And that is not something, I don't think it's fair. And I also don't think society really understands what they're asking. I mean, it can be $1 million over the lifetime of a woman who has to change her work around raising children. And then again, that same woman having to do it later in life. She retires early, goes to part-time, You know, whatever. The money foregone alone can be up to $1 million.
And not only that, but the emotional toll too, because you are the one who is in charge and you're expected to be the one in charge. And so that means, you know, sometimes you have to stuff your own emotions. Sometimes you have to take on, you know, taking care of other people's emotions and not, you know, but then you turn around and go, but what about me? You know, at some point you have to be able to say that.
As women,
we do.
Every step
of the way. We
way.
do. Absolutely. We always put ourselves last. You know,
and everyone else does too.
Candy joins us from Suffolk. Hi, Candy. You're on the air.
How you doing?
Doing good.
I just wanted to thank you for having Desiree on, and to let her know that I will be ordering her book because I think it's awesome. And as a fellow, I'm a native Detroiter, so thank you so much. And I made a mistake and clicked, and we have some friends in common, so I did put a fan request, just to let you know.
All right. I love that. It'll make me feel more at home here in Virginia to have some of my
Candy is actually an author herself, and she wrote a book called The River Runs Through It, and it's the story of her travels to Haiti, and she takes dolls and educational materials to students in Haiti after the earthquake and so forth. And
it sounds
so she's a special lady. Thanks, Candy, for the call. We appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And we are having, just for people to know, that right before Mother's Day on May 11th.
May the 11th at the Muse over in Ghent in Norfolk. There will be a reading. It's called More Than a Mother. More Than a Mother.
Me and like 3 other poets and writers are going to be reading pieces that sort of expand the notion of mother. Beneath that mantle of mother, who are these human beings?
These human beings?
Yes.
It's from 4 to 6 at the Muse, and you can go online to find out more information about that. Absolutely. Okay, so you're going to read part of Know the Mother?
I am. This is a pretty short one.
Okay.
Know the Mother. As I wash my mother's back, her scent fills my nostrils. Already she smells like a garden unearthed, a freshly dug grave. I soak the cloth in warm water and witch hazel. She sighs as I swab her shrunken thighs, her shriveled feet. Don't leave me, I plead beneath my breath. She twitches and my heart leaps. Maybe she's changed her mind and has decided to stay with me a little longer. But for the next 3 hours, she gives me nothing to hold on to, not one fluttering eyelid, not a wan smile of possibility. She is leaving me so easily. I wonder if her love ever rose above duty. 2 months ago, I was bringing warm sheets up from the dryer in the basement. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear Mother singing. I dashed around the corner, half expecting to see her remaking the bed, lifting the mattress to miter the corners. But when I reached her room, nothing had changed. Her hair was still a thin layer of down. Her cheeks were still sallow. Her shoulder blades jutted beneath the summer blanket as if she were hiding a favorite book beneath the covers. Yet somehow, as she slept, she was a young woman again, singing. At her bedside, I doze without resting. I dream that my mother is dressed in a black taffeta gown. Her cheeks are rouged with stage makeup, her eyes shimmering. On cue, she makes her way to the curtain. I call her name 3 times, but nothing I say can make her look back.
Oh, that's beautiful. I tell you, it strikes. It strikes home. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I was about to take a call that we just lost. Yeah. Oh, well. So the other one that kind of goes along with that one, too, is the Requiem for a Dress.
I will not be reading that one. I just can't get through it without crying.
Yeah, it just...
Don't ask me.
Okay, I won't ask you to read that one. But it also... I mean, the thought of a mother losing their child, that's probably got to be the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Because, it's supposed to be that the parent goes first.
Yeah. And in the story, the mother has dementia, and she can't seem to hold on to the fact that she's getting dressed that morning to go to her daughter's funeral. Yeah. She's confused over and over again about why she's putting on this dress and what's going to happen next. So it's terrible that due to dementia and Alzheimer's, we lose each other. We lose our history.
Exactly.
We lose our connection. That can be very, very difficult.
On both sides.
On both sides.
So apparently the person that we were hoping to get on the air, your cousin Danye, wants you to talk about your mother's mother.
Oh, what?
Desiree's cousin Danye, it says, wants Desiree to talk about her mother's mother.
Oh.
Does that sound
okay?
You know what she's talking about?
Well, there's so many stories. So my family goes back. I've been able to do some genealogy work, and so we can go back into slavery on my mother's side. And so I come from a line of midwives, women who were doing healing. My grandmother Betty was just the sweetest. This book, Know the Mother, is dedicated to Betty, my grandmother, my mother, and my daughter.
Nice.
And just the kindest, most generous, most open woman. But I learned later in life that all of the women up to my mother, and possibly even my daughter, it skipped me, have some connection with the unseen world.
Really?
Yeah, and so they all are able to sort of sense things that
happening before it happens.
Yeah, yeah. So my mother called me on the morning of 9/11 crying. And I was like, what's the matter? She said, I had the most horrible dream. I dreamed your grandmother came back and was sitting on the corner of my bed. And she told me, don't worry, everything is going to be okay. Just be calm. Everything's going to be okay. And then she heard glass shattering all through the house. And that glass shattering is what woke my mother up. And when she got up, a lamp that belonged to my grandmother had splintered into pieces. It was just sitting on the dresser.
Just sitting there.
Yeah. And then hours later. So I don't know if you can connect those or not. They're connected in my mind.
In your mind. Yeah. Were there any other writers in your family? Are there any other writers in your family?
I have some cousins, who are writers and some people who are still working on it, just like I am. I think I'm the one that's kind of gotten sort of broken through a little bit. But I have another cousin in particular who's written some romance things. And
what about your daughter? How did she react to the book? Just curious.
Very emotional. But again, it's not autobiography.
Right.
So there is that distance that she has that other people are feeling it's closer to me than she does because she knows the stories. But I think it helped. Again, Know the Mother. It helped her know what's been in my mind and in my head all these years that I was mothering her. And
I'm sure now that she has children that she's thinking also about, well, here's some things that I really want to be about and that I want to do also. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's hopefully made that clearer for her.
It's been a bridge for us.
Let's see if we can get one more call in. Christine joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Christine. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you for having me. I love your show and the conversations you have.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
So, I'm just following up on kind of the emotional toll that you all were talking about, just taking on women who, have to shoulder all of the responsibility at home, sometimes for multiple, different generations. And I find myself in that position right now. My husband and I are down here temporarily while he is pursuing his medical degree. And, we don't have children yet, but I'm taking care of my grandparents and, my grandmother, my grandfather's recently deceased. But, going back and forth to do that, taking care of everything around the house for two people. And while he's, trying to go do great things and he will be a phenomenal physician. He is a wonderful, wonderful human being. And I'm very happy to support him. But the 3 years prior to this have been a transition for me because when I came here, my career could not follow me.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a transient existence for me, trying to figure out where that fit was. And it finally just all came to a head. So it's a very interesting conversation to hear as it just kind of all came out. And I finally landed at, he's very supportive of me. He feels terrible that, that it's happened this way in terms of my career at the moment. But, I want to be able to be there for him and support him and help him reach his goal. So, just as he'll help me reach my goal. But I'm afraid of, what comes down the road. Do we keep pushing it off?
Got you, Christine. I'm going to have to let Des answer this because we're almost out of time. But thank you so much for the call. Go ahead, respond to her.
Well, when is it your turn?
Yeah.
When is it your turn? And we've heard this, even in the civil rights movement, where African-American men were leading the way, and then women were saying, well, what about our rights? It's not your turn. Be quiet. We're not dealing with women's rights. We're dealing with African-American. We're dealing with Black civil rights now. And so I hear Christine asking that question, and all I can say, Christine, is hold on to yourself and make room. Make them make room for who you are.
Exactly. And I mean, because the other part of that too is we also take on the guilt. Yeah. Because we go, well, if I don't do it, then, or if I turn this on myself, then this won't happen or that won't happen.
And I did hear in Christine's voice, I'm a good person. I'm a good person. I love him. I'm a good person. Yeah, you're a good person. He's a good person who loves himself as well. And it's no problem that he can reach for his aspirations and still say he loves his wife. So why can't you do that as well? And I know it's hard.
Yeah.
But you are a good person, even if you have these thoughts that are sort of taboo and troublesome. You are
allowed to care about yourself.
Yeah, and that's what the book does. Is it talks about women who are pregnant who want to be pregnant, but in the moment maybe they don't want to be in that day or that hour, or women who don't want to caregive anymore. It's okay,
and it is okay. The book is called Know the Mother. The author is Desiree Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a fabulous. I know. No. Can you believe that? We got one other story we need to tell,
all right,
and but we really appreciate it. And don't forget, you can see Desiree at the Muse on May 11th. There's a reading from 4 to 6 p.m. and we will be right back.
Hi, everyone. My name is Captain Lauren Glover. I was the first female to lead the United States Army drill team and the only one to date. And you are listening to Another View.
I'm going to shoot my producer. That's just a joke. I'm only kidding. Oh, my goodness. I thought for a moment we were playing the story, the actual story that we're about to tell you. Captain Lauren Glover is the first woman to ever command the United States Army drill team. And she will be recognized at this year's Virginia International Tattoo as they salute women in the military. Captain Glover recently took time out of her very busy schedule to share with our Lisa Godley some of the highs and lows of leading such a prestigious group.
When Lauren Glover first saw the United States Army drill team perform, she didn't know much about the unit, but it wasn't long before Lauren was all in.
I instantly became a fan. To see the precision, to see the hard work and dedication that they put in and what their shows look like. Every time I had an opportunity to watch them rehearse or practice, I was there.
But Lauren had to put her admiration for the group on hold when she became the drill team commander.
Today, the drill team is led by our first female drill commander, First Lieutenant Lauren Glover of Columbus, Ohio.
You have to have that leader face. You have to make sure that they don't know that you think that they're that cool, because then you lose their respect a little bit. I mean, they knew that I thought that they were awesome, and I think they appreciated that, but they also knew that I wanted to take them to the next level and I wanted to achieve the missions we had set forth, and they knew I was behind them 110%.
She says even with all the practicing, being the drill team commander was both unique and fun, and has taken Lauren all across the country, providing some unique opportunities.
We performed for Cleveland Cavaliers halftime game, the New Orleans Pelicans halftime game. We got to New York with Spirit of America, a show that Fort Myer puts on. So we got to go to a few pretty cool places.
The team performs with 1903 Springfield rifles with bayonets. And if you're the commander, standing in the middle of a group of soldiers tossing these weapons into the air can create some pretty hairy moments.
During actual performances, you never know. Is the floor split? The guy's shoes, are they going to have the traction they need? To do a throw and catch, if they overshoot it, it could come at me. On one of the hat band drills, unfortunately, one of my guys slipped a little bit. The hat band, it's when they have all their bayonets are faced at my hat brim, and he slipped. As he brought his bayonet up towards my face, he slipped, and it went into my shoulder. It didn't break skin, but it hurt really bad.
Lauren, who is now a captain, says for the year and a half she was the team's leader, the hardest part was the isolation.
I was ostracized. Initially, it was supposed to be a very small thing, but word got out and it got bigger. And obviously, I wanted it to get bigger because I wanted the team to reach those levels and those heights that they had previously and go even higher. And if I can use this new niche that I had brought to the team, I was going to. But in doing that, not everybody was happy with it. I did see things said about me or written about me that I didn't really appreciate. So I spent a lot of time on my own, which took its toll. But I did have a good support system in my husband and my family and my friends.
The encouragement also came in unexpected ways, like from fans.
This older woman got this huge smile on her face, and she reached in for a hug, so I hugged her. She held on to me, and she whispered in my ear, "This is why we sat." And I'm assuming it was referring to the civil rights movement sitting in on buses. And something that I subscribe to is the quote, "I am my ancestors' wildest dream." And so for her to say that to me made my struggle worth it. It made me feel like I was doing something that was truly good, and that her being proud of me, it makes everything that I had gone through and I still kind of go through, it makes it worth it. It just means more than I think she'll ever know.
But even with the struggle, her advice to others is to go for it.
When I saw the team and initially was interested in leading them, I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in me being able to do it, and I didn't ask immediately. I sat on it, and when I talked to my husband about it, I said, well, I don't know, they probably wouldn't pick me anyway. And I wrote myself off. And he said, make them tell you no. He said, if you don't ever ask and you don't ever try, how do you know you wouldn't be successful?
Needless to say, she's glad she did. Lauren is currently studying psychology in Washington, D.C., on her way to fulfilling her dream of becoming a psychologist for the Army. But she'll pause from her studies and come to Norfolk next week to be one of the women recognized during this year's Virginia International Tattoo. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And this year's tattoo is titled Courage and Commitment, a salute to women in the military, and will take place April 25th through the 28th at the Norfolk Scope. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us today. If you'd like to hear this show again or share it with a friend, please visit our website, anotherviewradio.org, and download the podcast. And in fact, you can listen to all of our shows online. And while you're there, please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. We're on Facebook, so like us, and I'm on Twitter at Barbara Ham Lee. Next time on Another View, a conversation with our favorite cardiologist, Dr. Keith Newby. And as a reminder, if you'd like to see Desiree Cooper, you can visit The Muse, which is located in Ghent in Norfolk on May the 11th. The reading is from 4 until 6 p.m. The book is called Know the Mother. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Jimmy Cooper answered our phone. This weekend is a high holy season for both Jews and Christians. We here at Another View say Happy Passover and Happy Easter. Thank you all so very, very much for listening to Another View.